line drawing of Jesus in the classical style, but then reversing it like a photographic negative. So that, yeah, that's the Jesus we know, but it's very different somehow. So I'm thinking of maybe doing that some way. But yeah,
Yeah,
I welcome help.
that's a good idea. I want to celebrate with you. That's an excellent work. It goes very far beyond the orthodoxy. That's very limiting.
It's kind of haunted me for a good while. And then I thought, yeah, that might work. So I started doing it. And it's I'm just going from the Revised Standard Version, but putting it completely in my
In your own
own
words.
idiom with some gags in there. Like there's a couple of places where I even add something that Jesus doesn't say in the gospel, but that he should have said. And like, for instance, he says that, oh, don't pray and fast in public. You're just doing that for the reward of people saying, "Wow, look at that guy. He's pretty holy." Uh, that's cheap publicity. No, you need to do these things in secret so God will see it and say, okay, now this fellow's sincere, and then he'll really reward you. What's the difference? It's like self-interest either way. How am I going to get the bigger reward? What's the best investment of my prayers here? So I try to paraphrase the original fairly, and then then I quote from one of the rabbis from about 300 years before Jesus, who says, "Don't be like a servant who does what his master says to get a reward." Now, just be a servant who's not looking for a reward. And it's put better than that. But I added that to say, I have Jesus saying, "I will show you a better way." And then he quotes that. And in the footnote, I say, well, New Testament scholars say that the early church attributed to Jesus sayings from the current rabbis. So if they could do it, why can't I? And here it is. And so I've done stuff like that, and to get people to think, like when I put what Jesus ostensibly says in uh, bolder, striking language, I'm hoping to get them to say, "Wow, yes, I never really saw that in it. Yeah, I think I get it." But if I can also get them to say, "Is that really right? Or couldn't it have been even better?" And so I like to tamper with it. And I explain in the introduction that's what I'm going to be doing. And I think there's a lot of food for thought in it. It isn't ridiculing the text, but I do have some humor to make the medicine go down, as they say. Like when they say, "Oh, this Jesus guy, he's demon possessed. Don't listen to him." And well, then I add, some friend of his says, "I don't know. He doesn't sound like a demoniac to me." And then somebody else says, "Yeah, my cousin Arphaxad is a demoniac. You ought to hear the obscenities fly." Well, that's not in the text, obviously, but I'm envisioning it. Suppose this was really happening. What kind of reactions would you get, and so on? So I'm really having a great time. And I also have like loads of scholarly footnotes too. So it's a kind of a weird mixed bag, and I think it's entertaining and informative. Another thing, I'm collecting my a lot of my published horror stories. I already have two collections of those out. One called Blasphemies and Revelations, and it's a huge, thick book. A shorter collection is horrors, yeah, horrors and heresies. And that one, I published both of those myself. And Carol and I are putting together a third one called Lovecraftian Legends. And then there's at least one more. If I can find the files, I can't remember the darn title, but I don't know how well the first ones are selling. Oh yeah, another thing I wanted to mention, my heroic fantasy novel, Thongor Conquers the Underground World, based on a detailed outline by Lynn Carter, who wrote the original Thongor series. He was a friend of mine, and he left behind outlines for a couple of novels he never got around to writing. And so for years, I procrastinated and thought, boy, I would love to fill out these outlines and finish the book, but I've never written anything of that length. Well, maybe this would be like training wheels on a bike. Maybe this could get me into the swing of a longer narrative. So I finally did it. It didn't even take very long, and it's been published. It's on Amazon now, and I'm really proud of that one. And see, another one I'm concerned with is my mammoth book, Houses of the Holy, a higher critical survey of the world religions. And I've sent that to a couple of publishers and I'm waiting to hear, but if need be, we'll just publish that one too. And this may probably will be the same way. But some say this is the better way to publish. I don't know. We'll see.
So you have experience also with editorial, I don't know what's the correct word, editorial houses or publishing houses, and also as a self-published author. You do both?
Yeah. Most of my books have been published by others. I've done a bunch of fiction anthologies, and most of them have come out from Chaosium in California. They're dedicated to Lovecraft's fiction, that of other similar authors, and also gaming manuals for role-playing games. They did that before they got into fiction. And the reason they did that was these scenarios they published are often based on stories by Lovecraft and his disciples. And this really became a big thing among young folks. And they said, well, where did this come from? I'd kind of like to read the stories that these games are based on. And so I was approached by the publisher, and because I had done a couple of anthologies already for somebody else, and I wound up doing, I don't know how many of them, 20 or so, and there were a couple of my stories in there, but they were mainly by other authors. And let's see, I've published one or two of those myself, but mostly almost all of them have been from other publishers. My books on the Bible and religion, most of those have come out from Prometheus Books or Pitchstone Publishing or several others. So I've been real lucky that way, but I'm sort of writing too much to be able to get publishers for all of them. So I don't mind putting out books where I'm going to be getting the, whatever sales there are, and you can do it real well. You can have Amazon do it, and they will actually print up the thing if you send it to them camera ready, which Carol is a whiz at, and you just have to demonstrate legally that you have the rights to publish these things, and which isn't that tough to do. I negotiated with the people and can just send them that. And the books look pretty good. I mean, they look like they're professionally done, so I guess they are professionally done. And I have several like that, though not by far half of them even. So I'm really a writing fanatic, and I love doing it, and it's great fun to see the finished product.
So counting these all together, not only the books that you published, but also the books that you haven't published yet and that you hopefully will publish, I hope. Like roughly how many books have you written, Doctor?
I'd say about 70.
7.
There are two or three of them are very short, but most of them are substantial books. And every once in a while, I hear that so and so scholar who I had heard of but never met has read one of my books and commented on it positively or negatively, and I'm always real thrilled with that, to know that I'm making waves somewhere, and that I'm not the only one reading them. But, we'll
Right.
see.
That's really cool that other people get to read your work. It's like something that's really meaningful for you as an author, that other people are feeling compelled to know what's inside your work, and
Oh yeah,
feel
you
proud.
wouldn't believe this as an example of that. A guy who I've never personally met. He lives down in New Orleans. He is, I think, a youth pastor or something. He seems like a youngish guy, and very interested in theology and very smart. Well, he told me he liked my books, and did I have any available? Well, over the past couple of years, I've sent him copies of this and that, autographed with a little message in them. And he sent me, he ordered a copy of my book, the pre-Nicene New Testament, which is it's like about the length of the Lord of the Rings. It's about 1,200 pages. And he said he wants me to autograph it. And once I do, and I sent it back to him yesterday, he's going to have the book leather bound, like it's his, because it's the New Testament, if they had been accepting all the interesting stuff available and not just the 27. So I got all kinds of stuff in there, and he's considering it his New Testament. It's amazing to me. If he becomes some crazy heretic, it'll be my fault, I guess.
Well, that would be an extra bonus. So I would really like to put my hands on that book also. Where can I get it, or how can I find it?
Amazon has its Signature Books in Utah published it, but I wish I had a copy to send you. I've gotten rid of all of my author's copies years ago, but you can get it from Amazon. I know, probably Barnes and Noble as well.
Could you send me, would you text me the full description of the book, like the title and, the way it's published, so I can
Oh
find it
yeah,
easily?
yeah. Yeah, I can send you the Amazon link and so forth. I
Yeah.
can do that. In fact, I did just send you the electronic file of Merely Christianity, one of my recent books, and it's fairly short, and it's I don't want to use well, it's basic in that it deals with big theological issues in Christianity from a sympathetic but critical perspective, saying it's kind of a rejoinder to C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity, where he says, let me just boil it down and I'm going to talk about the basics here. Well, I'm doing that, but he was famous for putting things in plain, winsome language, a great communicator. Well, I try to do that. And he said, I'm not asking anybody to accept Christianity if he doesn't think it's reasonable. I do, so I've accepted it, but I'm going to make my best case. Well, what I've done here is to offer like a friendly rejoinder to say, it doesn't make as much sense as Lewis said. Here's what it says, and here's some problems with it you may not have thought of. And so some people have told me they like that. So I sent you that if you want to take a crack at translating it.
I will.
Early Christianity did manage to do some social reforming. They grew pretty quickly, and they were respected by a lot of people who weren't Christians, even because they were big on disaster relief. like the Middle East and the Mediterranean were plagued with constant famines, earthquakes, wars, and so on. And we hear even from Julian the Apostate, a neo-pagan emperor, he said, boy, those Christians, there's the alarm goes out, people are killed in an earthquake, they're on the spot, and there's ministering not only to their own people, but anybody else. And he said, our stinking clergy just run for the hills. I wish we had people that would be as selfless as these Christians. Christians were important, arguing against infanticide, which was taken for granted in the Greco-Roman world. If you say, what, you're having another girl, put her out with the garbage. We've already got too many of them to try to marry off. And like early Islam, Christians said, oh, no, you can't do that. So they were important for that reason. They were known for their dedication to a single religion, where, like Jews were, though not even all of them were. Because if you don't have that, you have what one historian called a diversified portfolio. You could join a whole bunch of different religions, hoping that at least one of them might have saving sacraments. Well, that kind of implies you don't really believe in any of them. And Christians sort of fostered this idea of really putting your money where your mouth is and being loyal to one religion no matter what anybody says. And they were very attractive. They used to collect money to buy slaves and free them. And they didn't have an absolute doctrine against slavery, but it wouldn't have made any sense. They didn't have power until Constantine. They couldn't have just argued for abolitionism, but a bunch of them actually did collect money to free slaves. And so there were a lot of admirable things about them, and which I think embarrasses atheist haters of Christianity. There's no use in denying that they did help humanize the human race, and still do. But that's not the problem. Like that, I hasten to commend Christians, ancient and modern, for that. But conceptually, a lot of it just does not make any sense to me anymore. Like, I was listening to TV the other day, and this Billy Graham's son, an evangelist, gets on there and he says, God's son came into the world to take on your sins on the cross so you can be forgiven. What does that mean? I mean, I used to say that and believe it for years and years, but like when you look at all the theories that theologians have come up with to explain how on earth this guy's death could lead to the forgiveness of your sins, none of them really make any sense. And the Trinity, oh boy, there's a classic, right? What are you talking about when you say the three are one, but still three? All the explanations just forget it. And the clergy will say, well, you see, it's a divine mystery. You can't expect to understand such deep things. And now I'll grant them, that could be. I mean, we don't even know what quasars are, right, in astronomy. Sure, if we're dealing with something, an infinite being, granted, it would be stupid to think you could just, oh yeah, I can explain that. But the thing is there any reason to believe that's true in this case? Because it kind of looks like it's just a patch job that Christians were coming to believe in Jesus as a second God, and Jews were letting them know it. What are you talking about? Monotheism. You're worshiping at least two gods. Oh, well, no, we're not, because somehow they're the same, even though they're different. Get out of here. I mean, I just, maybe they're right, but it looks suspicious to me. Or predestination, or all manner of things. It just seems like again and again you're running into a brick wall. No one can really explain it. And then you got to ask yourself, if you can't explain it, do you even know what it means? I mean, how are you even saying you believe it if it's something you can't get your mind around? You believe in what? It's like saying, I believe in X. What is X? Well, I don't know. It's just X, but I believe it. You're welcome to it, buddy. I like the analogy. It's like watching the Oscars, which I haven't done for years. And suppose you stay up till 4 a.m., as it always lasts that long on TV. And they finally get to the Best Picture award. So the guy takes the envelope, opens it up. He's standing at the podium with a microphone, and he reads it and said to himself, well, what do you know? I hope you'll be with us next year on the Oscars. Well, wait a minute. What was it? He said, well, I can't really tell you, but rest assured there is a Best Picture in this envelope. Well, what sense does that make? It's not like it's false. It's not even good enough to be false. It's just gibberish. And so I try to say that a little less insultingly, but...
That's a great analogy. Damage control, perhaps, on what they teach today and what they're going to stop teaching?
Well, I think the idea of hell is pernicious. It really makes God into a monster and a hypocrite. It's even worse because you're saying God is completely loving and good. He's like a father. Would a father give a snake to his son if his son asked for a fish, right there in the Gospels? But then you find out, wait a minute, this God is in effect going to submit you to eternal torment if you fail your theology exam. What are you talking about? How can you even speak of a loving God? What do you mean by the words? If it's compatible with inflicting eternal torment on people, how do you square that with love? What's your definition of love? So there's a big problem if you eliminate that and you say, I believe that God will save all people. If once they get to heaven, they'll be enlightened. They'll regret what they did, but it'll be moot because we'll all forgive one another. To me, that would be much more of a Christian thing. Why not do that? Why do you have to have as the price tag eternal fiendish torture? Just get rid of that. Now, how come there are Christians who persecute Christian bigots? Well, because they are being more consistent. They see what the Christian God that's depicted in the Bible is like, and they say, well, I guess I better be like that. And if he hates certain people, I guess I should too. Though if you just read certain portions of the Bible, you'd never come to that conclusion. Well, let's just stick to those. I mean, it's like unchristian to believe in the Christian doctrine of hell. It's not like that's the only thing Christianity says. It's a mixed bag of ideas and opinions. So you could just amputate some of that and say, well, Jesus Christ, what a character, what a moral paragon. If he existed or not, read about this guy. He's got guts. He stands up for the persecuted, tells the truth. He doesn't care what anybody says. I can see modeling my life on this guy, or trying to. You don't need the Trinity doctrine or the dual natures of Christ. You could just say, I'm a Christian because I think this is the way to go. That's like the idea of a realm of punishment was in Greek mythology for a long time. But it was but it really became like our hell idea thanks to Neo-Pythagorean preachers from Sicily who they lived in a volcanically active area. They had volcanoes, fumaroles, hot springs, and all that. And it led to the belief that hell must be underground. And this particular sect, they went around like missionaries preaching Pythagoreanism and including this. And that seems to be how where Jews in, let's say, the intertestamental period picked it up. They had already believed in something similar called Gehenna or Tophet or a couple of other names, which was a kind of subterranean, fiery chasm world where the god Molech lived. And he's mentioned a few times in the Old Testament as a real bad guy because people sacrificed their firstborn sons to him, barbecued him basically. Well, that, however, wasn't believed to be a post-mortem place of conscious torment. It was loathsome. It was a horrible, stupid thing, but at least it wasn't the idea of hell. Whoops, I'm sorry, you're too bad to go to heaven, or you're a heretic, so forever you are going to be tormented down there. At least it wasn't that, but that seems to have come in with the Greek missionaries from Sicily. And so that was a later and very unfortunate development. Now, not even all of the New Testament says that, but it does come up pretty strongly 2 or 3 times.
Because what I do understand is that in the Jewish religion, they do have this that you said, like the Gehenna,
Mm-hmm.
but it's only like they say that in their law, they say that eternal hell doesn't make sense. That at the most you can be there for 11 months, 12 months. That's why I was asking you, where did Christianity get the idea from? Not only hell or the concept of the punishment of hell, but also the lengths of the punishment.
Yeah, well, there are a couple of places in the Gospels where Jesus sounds like he may be referring to hell, but it's sort of in a parable way, so it's not that clear. He says, if you're on your way to the courtroom and you happen to join your accuser on the way, like let's say I assume it's some kind of small claims court where you and your neighbor are having a problem, says try to settle with him on the way to the court, because if you don't, who knows what verdict is coming down. You may have to go into debtor's prison, and you ain't getting out of there until you've paid the last cent. Well, that's a debtor's prison analogy. So is it just wise advice? Save yourself the danger of having to go to debtor's prison. Could be, but Catholics have always taken it to mean, oh, this is an analogy. You're on your way to the judgment right now. And in a sense, God is your accuser. So why don't you try to reconcile with him now by repenting? Because if you don't, you may wind up in this this post-mortem prison, and you're not getting out of there until you've paid your debt. Well, if that is a reference to hell, later they kind of change it to purgatory, that would imply at least it's not supposed to be forever. But who knows? Because in Hinduism and Buddhism, they also have hells, and they are of a limited duration, of only countless billions of years. Like it'll be over. Like this Buddhist story where somebody asks the Buddha how long hell will be. And he says, well, let's look at it this way. Think of a sea turtle just floating around in the Indian Ocean. And somewhere in that ocean is an old plow handle, long wooden thing with a hole in one end. And that's just floating aimlessly in the Indian Ocean. How long do you think it would take before that sea turtle, simply by popping his head above the water to see what's up there, would wind up popping it up through the hole in the handle of the plow? It'd probably take quite a long time. Who knows how many centuries? Well, that would be as much as one day in hell. So it's not eternal, but what's the difference? And if you think about it, like eternal hell, you'd be stark raving mad. You could.
The teaching that you just mentioned, is that accurate, or does that conform with his audience or with the?
Well, yeah, that's in Buddhist scripture. So if you're Buddhist, you're supposed to believe it, and they probably do.
No, I meant the other one where the two people are going to a trial, and that they should. But does that comport with what the Jewish law say? Like the debtor needs to go to jail, or is there another punishment? Like the debtor needs to sell himself like a slave. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, that's explicit even in the way back in the Old Testament, indentured servitude. So that would be equivalent. You're just not confined. But debtor's prison, like obviously, if you're in jail, you're not going to be able to work off the debt. But it's assumed your family would probably have to. Like paying a ransom, they'd have to pay it to the debtor, so he doesn't get.
Where does it say that they were like supposed to? I don't understand the punishment.
Well, in Matthew, it implies that if this is based on Archelaus, the king of Judea under the Romans, right after he was the son of Herod the Great. And Herod, of course, was a bloodthirsty, paranoid maniac. And Archelaus was apparently worse. And so they've set up a parable. They say that he went to a far distant country to receive the title of king. And then he came back, and he had entrusted the money to these people, and the guy that didn't make any, he does throw him out brings in the torturers or something, but it's sort of set up by saying, yeah, this is Archelaus, this is what you'd expect by him, but why do that? It's a good one if you drop the punishment, which is just part of the primitivism of the times, because I think it's about where, like the guy that goes away, the rich man, he says, now I'd be doing this if I were here, but I'm not going to be, so I need you guys to handle some investment for me. Here, you take 10 talents, you take 5, here is you take 1. Well, he obviously realizes they have different capacities, but he's testing, and when he comes back, and as you say, he's real proud of the first one. I doubled the amount. Great. Second one does the same thing, though with less money, so the result is less, but he figured that would happen. It was profitable anyway. The third one, well, master, I knew that if I lost this in a bad investment, that who knows, I know you're a rough customer, you don't put up with nonsense, so I figured at least this way I'm not losing it. And he says, you stupid jerk, you could have at least put it in the bank, I'd have gotten interest on it. What's the matter with you? Well, to me, this is a great parable, because it's saying, look, God, your creator, has given you certain talents and abilities, certain opportunities. What have you done with them, with your life? And abilities may be limited, your opportunities may be limited, but I want to see what you can do with what you've been given. And the third guy doesn't even try. I've always thought, and I say it in my paraphrased version, that the king or the lord, whoever, says, if you'd have just tried to invest it and you did lose, still, that would have been all right. I just wanted you to take the risk. If you don't take, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And I get that impression that if you've done nothing with your life, you're the one that's punished by that simple fact. Why didn't you take risks? That's not the way to live. And I realize that's a kind of modernizing view, but I really believe basically
But it
that
does
is the
sound,
idea.
without
And
the punishment part, it does make sense because people are really afraid of punishment by doing something that they're trying to achieve something, but at the end it doesn't work. So,
But
mm,
how do you know that unless you try? And if you are the person that tries, that means you are already strengthening your character and bringing out your potential, even if you this doesn't happen to work. Like you've heard these stories where some millionaire says, well, I started this company and it fell flat. Well, I learned some stuff and I tried another one. That really didn't work either, but I was learning every time and eventually I hit the jackpot. uh, well, yeah, that's the way to look at it. You're in a learning process, not a failing process. And even if you don't make the money at the end, you've grown as a person. You can't really lose. And I take the parable to mean that. There's something in the Gospel of Thomas that I think makes the same point. It says that when the prophets and the angels come at the last day and demand of you what is theirs, what do you got to give them? Well, I assume that's kind of another version of the thing. Hey, we thought you, I mean, at least you had our teaching and stuff, right? Surely you made something of that. No, what a sad sack. So I admit it's modernizing, but I can't help thinking that's really the hook in the thing. So it's not punishment, really. It's just failure, which is
natural
its own
consequences,
punishment. I'm sorry, go ahead.
natural consequences.
Yeah, and you should be expecting it of yourself. What, like, if you believe in a creator, I mean, I think that's mythical too, but it's a helpful myth. I mean, in a sense, you're your own creator, and so what are you going to do about it? I did a sermon, I think, or a column, something like this, once called "Here's Your Chance," and I said, "Have you?" Do you have complaints about how God made the world? There's plenty of room for that. There's a lot wrong with the world. Well, how about this? On our level, you are affecting the world for other people. You are one of the creators of their world by speaking cruelly to them or in an upbuilding, edifying way. You can show them hostility or indifference, or you can show them love and be a good example. So if you're complaining about how God has created such a flawed world, well, you're kind of a creator. Here's your chance to do better. Make a better world of yours for other people. I mean, is there actually a creator God? I certainly don't know, though I don't bank on it. I doubt it. But I do know that's true. You're an influence and a creator, a co-creator of your world. So, do a better job than God. It seems to.
Exactly. It doesn't matter what you actually believe, but it actually more significant what you do with what you
Yeah,
believe, if it's something productive or not for your society and for your well-being.
right. Oh,
Thank you for your kind and knowledgeable words, Dr.